You shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. You shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem, in all Judea, Samaria, to the end of the earth. The issue of power and authority, these are not, it's not like you're buying a car and you have optional equipment. Power and authority is the engine of the car. I mean, you don't have a car without it. And the gospel, the essence of the gospel is literally carried out, illustrated, demonstrated, imparted to people because there's authority, because there's power.
Leaders of the NAR teach their converts to believe that their version of Christianity grants them access to a supernatural power and authority that cannot be accessed outside their network. This authority is allegedly granted by God to the leadership, and when members submit themselves to the authority of their apostle or prophet, they are directly connected to this power. According to NAR apostles, their so-called authority is for the purpose of controlling international politics. Certain passages from both the Old and New Testament are used to claim that words such as discipling can be interchanged with controlling, and that even non-Christian nations must fully submit to their authority. NAR converts are led to believe that apostles will soon claim dominion over government systems. Government leaders, both foreign and domestic, will allegedly be controlled by the NAR network. As shocking as this claim may seem, part of that network has already been established through an event called the National Prayer Breakfast.
What you notice in the Matthew passage is that authority was for the purpose of discipling nations. Power is for the purpose of transforming nations, and there is a difference. Discipleship has a direction. Chris Valentin just got back from the Washington Presidential Prayer Breakfast.
The National Prayer Breakfast is a yearly event held in Washington, D.C. Until being exposed as a threat to the United States by several news articles and documentaries, the event was organized by the Fellowship Foundation, otherwise known as the Family. Superficially, it functions as an open forum for the political, social, and business elite to assemble and pray together. However, the Family is an invisible or clandestine organization recognized for its strong influence on powerful public figures. The organization was created in 1944 by Abraham Verreed, who served as the executive director until his death in 1965. Verreed was connected to very powerful people in the years leading up to the organization's establishment. After Henry Ford's Dearborn Independent began to publish anti-Semitic articles, in the wake of the Christian identity movement, Ford became one of Verreed's Bible students. As the Christian identity movement spread throughout the latter rain revivals, identity leaders worked with Verreed to lobby for certain agendas. Baron Frere von Blomberg, who sponsored William Branham's international tours overseas, worked with Verreed in the early days of the organization and served as an executive member. Von Blomberg worked as a director for the International Christian Leadership, holding conferences for the group in Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, France, England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. Von Blomberg was instrumental in organizing the International Christian Leadership, aka the Family, in many of those countries. Shortly after the Family moved to Washington, Demas Shakarian started holding a similar annual convention in Washington. The National Prayer Breakfast was held in February and then followed up with a full gospel business men's convention and breakfast. Latter Rain leader William Branham met with Vice President Nixon during these meetings, and both Branham and the FGBMI influenced powerful figures in Washington. Nixon's speech at the 1954 breakfast would significantly impact Branham's trajectory. Prior to hearing Nixon's speech, William Branham's claim of having 7 prophecies in 1933 depicted a world without peace, and Branham stated that he did not know whether communism, fascism, or Nazism would reign. However, after the speech, Branham significantly changed his 1933 prophecies to include a doomsday scenario that involved communism as the main threat.
I started to think about it, and as I thought about it, I started to have the same sense of impartation as I had when I had this encounter. And it began with a friend of mine. His name's Doug Coe. Anybody heard of Doug Coe? And Doug Coe, I want to read you this. He has been referred to as a stealth Billy Graham. In 2005, Doug Coe was named as one of the 25 most influential evangelicals in the United States by Time magazine.
American evangelist Douglas Coe was the associate director of the Fellowship Foundation and a large part of the reason the group was nicknamed the Family. Until his death in 2005, multiple publications recognized Coe's unusual influence over Christian, political, and business figures. Coe was mentored by evangelist Billy Graham, who was a frequent house guest of the elite members of the organization. After rising to influence over world leaders, Coe was nicknamed the Stealth Billy Graham. Over time, the family began harboring many secrets for powerful people, including United States government officials. Some of those secrets included sex scandals between presidential candidates and women in homes owned by the family. In 2009, it was reported that one particular house owned by the group in Washington was used for hookups, and that several House members, both Democrat and Republican, were using that home. Doug Coe was nicknamed the Godfather when people in the group recognized the strong similarities between the Fellowship Foundation and organized crime. Many secrets flowed to the top. Coe and his inner circle had formed a Christian mafia, and the family became referred to in the same way members of the mob would refer to a crime syndicate.
He has counseled world leaders, and he's one of the wise men he's one of the wisest men who lived today. In 1990, at the National Prayer Breakfast, George Bush praised Coe as the quiet diplomat, and also Hillary Clinton knows Doug Coe and said that he's one of the most loving spiritual mentors in the world, regardless of faith or party. And so he's a very significant man. He's in his 80s. I've had the privilege of meeting him about 4 or 5 years ago, and Bill and I stayed at his very beautiful I'd say it's kind of an old mansion.
In 2022, Netflix released a documentary titled The Family, which exposed some of the darker secrets of the organization. The multi-part series, inspired by Jeff Sharlet's book, The Family, The Secret Fundamentalism at the Heart of American Power, alerted viewers to a secret cult with tentacles spreading into other countries, covertly influencing American politics. Using the National Prayer Breakfast as a vehicle, the cult organization effectively took the wheel to drive governmental policies. Most concerning, this system of governmental control functioned outside of the political vote. A handful of Christian leaders in power had the ability to sway governmental policy and regulation without any of their opponents being able to cry foul. It did not take long for the operation to be dismantled. Both the news media and non-participating politicians were suddenly made aware that the White House was fully vulnerable to espionage through an elite group of conservative Christians, some of whom considered themselves modern-day apostles and prophets. The NAR had covertly achieved dominion over the government, one of the so-called mountains of the Seven Mountain Mandate. Regardless of which party was in power, NAR leaders had access to information and influence that non-members did not. But is this change only superficial? Will the NAR so easily abandon its ambition to take dominion over world governments? Unless new leaders step forward to bring positive change to the church, new so-called apostles and prophets will always exist to abuse its power.